And from your perspective, what keeps you going in doing the wrestling business? What was that one motivation to keep you going every single month in every wrestling event that you had?
I would say the thing that keeps me going is just wanting to continue to create art. This is
Mm.
this is my art, and I love making matches that are special to me that I can go back and watch and show people, and just like I've had people come to me after shows and be like, "Hey, this was my first wrestling shows. I love that." Like you
Yeah.
just said, "This is my first death match. Holy God, I love death matches now because of you." Those are the coolest things. Like when
Yeah.
you get to do that for people. So I think being able to at least put myself in a position to make more art for people is always going to be a driving factor in wrestling, because that is what it comes down to with wrestling. I mean, like, again, whatever I'm throwing my way, whether it's supposed to be the bloodiest match ever, or it's supposed to be technical or comedy, I just want to make art in any way I can, you know?
Hey everyone. This is going to be the first of 2 episodes that are going to be recaps that are audio only when it started. So I'm going to convert these to video just so that the ones who didn't get the video portion on these audio episodes, I do hope we get to see what we were talking about during this time while we were recording for the first season of the PGTK podcast. And the second one, I'm still working on who might be going to be using the audio portions to video down the line. So I can't wait to see who I can meet up again and use this episode one more time. And hopefully recording will be back again sometime within the next week. I'll keep you guys posted on socials to see where this recording is going to be. And this episode was recorded back in January 2024. This was still at the beginning of the first season of this podcast, as it started to really materialize into something where it is today. And you get to see, as you can tell, I have a haircut now, but back then I still had a full head of hair while we were recording it. So without further ado, here is the video episode featuring Dimitri Alexandrov. Thank you so much for having you on this episode, Dimitri. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Good, good. So 2023 has been a big year for you in the professional wrestling business. How was your 2023?
I think it was one of those years you call like a level up year, you know, a lot of good things, whether it was just some, you know, getting some like notice for certain things I'm doing in both the Austin scene, but also in like a lot of I'd say the greater United States. Now I'm getting some bigger opportunities now coming my way for what I did this year. I just a really good year, you know, just one of those years where it's like, hey, this feels like a step up. You know, sometimes wrestling can be very like, okay, we're just kind of trudging along, but this was very much I can feel it, and it feels good. Like at the end of the year, you look back and like, man, I had a really fun year, so I want to keep that momentum going.
What were some highlights that you've had during the year?
I would say number one of them, I would say just in terms of like Texas, you know, just a few companies putting their stock in me. Inspire AD, definitely a company that I feel like has really, you know, like given me a lot of opportunities, whether it was wrestling Joey Janela, wrestling, having the first death match for Inspire AD with Cass. Really fun things to say out loud and like, hey, I did that there, you know. And of course, me and Brian Keefe had a real fun one back in November. I was really happy with. I just say like, Inspire is definitely one of those ones that really like gave me the ball and let me run with it, you know, and that felt really good. Outside of that, I'd say like I, you know, debuted for like Circle 6. That was one that was really cool, you know, working with them, Atticus Kogar, working with him, that doing a light to prison match, something I never thought I would do in wrestling, and certainly something my trainer looking back would be like, come on now, what are you doing? But you know, just things like that. Russell Rave and our company in Houston, they let me do a lot of really fun stuff with death matches here too. Just it felt like a good balance of both really fun technical matches, but also some real fun, crazy death matches. And what more can I say? It was a lot of fun.
what's fascinating too, and with death matches do, in your perspective, what makes a good death match or hardcore matches as you started to doing those yourself?
One thing I've noticed is uh, a lot of people have a little stink with it sometimes, because it's sometimes like, okay, they're just gonna bash, bash. But more and more, I realized when you get into deathmatch, you look at the world and the landscape that it is, and you see that there are guys who are good wrestlers who happen to do death matches, and then there are guys who tend just to hit each other a lot with stuff, and it's kind of chaotic. And more, I have so much like this respect for those guys that are like, this guy's clearly a good wrestler, but he is doing this death match, and he's making
Mm,
it make the most sense, and it makes everything bigger without having to like. Maybe it is like it's a lot of blood, it's still bleeding, but at the same time, he's maximizing the emotion you can get out of it. The weight of it. It's not just like you're numb because you've seen glass break 1,000 times. It's like
yeah.
you're feeling something for when that glass does finally break. You're building up to it, and then there it is, and you're just like, okay, this is storytelling, this is wrestling, this is what I love, and that's something I would say with deathmatch wrestling. I got to really sink into and notice more and more this year. I love that.
Well, what's fascinating too, how do you prepare mentally when those matches happen? Because oftentimes, and I remember last year when Swerve faced like Hangman Page. From your
Yeah.
perspective, how do you prepare mentally to go before, during, and after a death match?
So I love to make this concoction, I call it,
Mm,
and it is I take some like I guess it would be a non-stimulant like a pre-workout. It's meant to like get your blood flowing. I'll put that. I'll take like an energy drink and some water. I'll mix that into one thing. I'll shake that up. I'll drink that, and then I just like to listen to some really fun, intense music or soundtracks that I'm really into, and I just kind of like put myself in a mental state. And then it's like right before I go break curtain, I have this moment of, as I've been told, it looks like I'm just so. Everyone says like, "Oh, you're so friendly and stuff," and then you go break curtain, and then you're about to go kill someone, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know if
that
it's just
escalated
me.
quickly.
It's me getting out, like, oh, this good feeling I'm having, and then it's me like, okay, now it's time to make the person I'm wrestling bleed all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like you go really high of joy, and then it's like right down at that like dark place for a second. That's how I kind of prevent for that.
Yeah. What were some songs that you would play with before a match? Like, what were some playlists that you had in mind?
There is a so I love Brody King's band. I don't know if you've
Mm.
heard that ever. God's Hate. They're a band that I really get into. It's just heavy music. My God, what is it called? The soundtrack to. Oh my God, someone's gonna shoot me now. I'm gonna go insane. What is that soundtrack now? Holy crap! I was listening. Hold on, I'm going to give me one moment. We're Spotifying for a second here. We're just
Yeah, no,
gonna
I'm doing
look at
that
what
too.
what. Hold on. Oh no, it's there's a guy on Spotify. His name's Leo. He does
Mm,
metal covers of literally every kind of song,
mm.
and he has a playlist of just some of them are normally dance party songs, but they've turned metal. And I don't
Ooh,
know
okay.
why. It
All
is
right.
it's it's music that I could dance to, but in that moment, it sounds so intense that like it now gets the
Oh.
moment of like I want to run and also run through you. I don't know why. That's my weird little like juicy list. It's like some God's Hate and then dance music that has been turned into metal music. It's this weird little combination of two.
Wow. I'm gonna find that.
Sometimes it's also a little bit of like metal video game or anime covers too a little bit. It's just getting myself in that like kill mode, a little bit.
Yeah. No, and it's
Mm.
fascinating because I want to talk about with your hardcore match with Jeff Gant, like
Yeah.
those spots. What was that? What was an interesting spot that you've done in that match that Sunday?
on Sunday itself, of course, getting a gusset plate in my head, I had to make it a little bit more than hardcore. Everyone always gets so worried when I put one of those in my head, and it just
Mm,
like I, I think it maximizes the amount of blood I get, and that sounds a weird thing to say, but I think it adds an element when you get that kind of color. A fascinating thing about that match, Jeff Gant, me and him barely talked about it.
yeah.
That match
And
was entirely on the fly,
when those on the
including the
fly
finish.
moments happen, what's gonna be when those moments happen? Like, what was going through your mind when it does happen?
Um, okay, the things go through my head. I'm being picked up and being thrown into something or something. Ow! And I hope that look good.
Yeah,
And
it's like,
that reaction, oh, I hear that. I hear that. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. I hear the crowd on things like that. Oh, they really hate Jeff here. That's good. That's good. You know, I I really like. This is gonna sound strange. I love motivating my opponents in matches.
mm,
Like I love like if something feels good or like look, I know it looked good. I in that moment sometimes I will verbally out loud say, "Awesome, that was good," and people have told me it's like you're really motivating to. I think that's a funny thing to say. I'm breaking kayfabe here, but like I I love being able to uplift people or like I think wrestling some people panic, especially in matches that do have blood and violent spots or in terms of like inspire apron bumps or bumps to the floor, things like that. People tend to like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's all good." I will make jokes sometimes to make
yeah.
people relax. Like I will do impersonations of things or like, "Hey, isn't that funny?" Or like or someone will kick me and they'll kick me all hurt, but I'll make a funny sound effect because I think it loosens them up a little bit.
It's
Oh
those
man.
moments of tension that helps out too, because like you don't want to leave someone. Because I was in that match too, and it's literally the old like movie trope of like I close my eyes with my hands, my peek just to make sure. Oh, I think he's good. I think he's good. All right, we're fine. So that match was kind of like that was actually like the first like death match I've had in a wrestling ring and in person. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating seeing like hardcore and death matches because it's very visceral. It's not
Yes.
a regular traditional match where
No.
it's not where it's not a one it's a 1 2 3 count, but there's actual like like actual brutality behind it. So it's
Yes.
just
Yes.
kind of fascinating. And what would you say is your favorite hardcore death match that you've wrestled with?
That I've done myself. I think there's a handful that I was trying to talk about this the other day with a friend. Uh, my choice. I had a really fun one last February with
Mm.
Atticus Kogar. It was my debut for Circle Six. He was their champion at the time, and he was injured. He had a really bad ankle. That being said, we worked a match that was we had something like 10,000 thumbtacks and various thumbtack
Oh,
things. Uh and he also is notorious for using the I don't know if you've seen the skewers. He's very
okay.
he's very notorious for using these little green skewers and he'll put them in your head or in your arm. And
Oh.
we did not do the arm. We did not do the arm. I was a little
Right.
iffy on that, but we did the head. And we had this match that was hyper brutal and he would never know that he was the one that was hurt. Like
Oh.
we did this match where he could barely move his ankle and stuff, and I just like it was this match where we completely let them know a little bit. Like we worked it, like I worked holes and stuff, and put like his leg in the tacks and stuff like that. But
Uh.
it was a match where we completely made them forget he really was hurt, and they thought it was just a injury in the match, and I love that match because of that. Another one I'd say I had a match with Angel Blue.
Mm.
I don't know if you're familiar with Angel. She's a very small person, and despite being a 5 foot tall woman, she has the personality of a 7 foot tall person, and she wants
Right.
everyone to know it. Very loudmouth, loves to be like the best heel in the world. She's had people throwing toilet paper at her and stuff. Um, I had her very first death match. She wanted to do one really bad. We did it for HOT at actually that same venue you saw, Come and Take It. We had it there, and I think we had like some of one of the most brutal death matches, and it was her very first one ever, and it was just we had gussets in our heads. I took the scissor bat to her, which she took it like a champ to the head, and she took a boxing glove covered in barbed wire and repeatedly hit me in the head with that. So,
oh no!
Oh yeah. I had. That being said, it was fun. It was a match that just like brought a lot of oh my god moments and a lot of brutality out of her. She's just hitting me with a ladder. She had my head trapped in, slamming it down over and over and over again. She's using all of her body weight on my head. It was just like wild. But I love those two matches. One very experienced in deathmatch, and the other their very first one. And I those two ones right there. They really stick out to me as my favorite ones. I've had some other ones in the past too, but those two from this past year, I just love them. I love them for very different reasons.
I'm curious too, like after a match, what's like the debrief when that happens? What goes through your head after a match?
Just it's you still have okay. I would say in the very first few minutes, you have this whole sense of it's like you're in a high. And maybe there is some intensity to it for a second, so a lot of times I like to go to the merch booth as soon as I can, just to calm down. But as soon as I love to make sure my opponent's fine, and I love to be just like, I don't know, you come off this high, it's like this angry high turns into a happy high. That sounds so weird to say, but like, you had all your intensity is usually left out there, and you go to the back, and you're like, I am the best me right now. That we did an awesome job out there, and we almost killed each other.
It's like there's no scapegoat at that. It's like, yeah, whatever. Let's just roll with it.
Let's roll with the punches. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is the scissor bat. When did that ever happen? I think I have my bat. I have it right here. I have it over in y'all. Right there. So like how did that come about?
So it was originally a weapon made by a guy named Bradley Mann. He actually is the announcer for HOT this past Sunday. He was the one. He's been doing that for them lately. He helps run a company known as Baracho Pro Wrestling now. Which they do shows still in Austin. And he made it originally the first one. This is technically the blue one is the third one. So the very first one was made for the original, I would argue, Deathmatch King of Texas, a guy named Ruben Steele, who I'm actually wearing his shirt. Weird enough. I love Ruben. That guy is the man. He had to retire because of neck injuries sustained actually from normal wrestling matches, not death matches. I'll get into that in a minute, but it's really sad. He originally used it a few times in matches, and then whenever I started doing a little more predominant stuff, Bradley made me one, and I was loving it and everything, and then a fan stole it, and then he made me this blue one, and I've just decided to make it a symbol of myself because I don't think anyone else has ever done the scissor bat. And I've seen scissor boards, which are terrifying, and all these other things in deathmatch wrestling, but never the bat. I like to say that's my own little like signature weapon, if you will.
Yeah, it's kind of nice seeing some of those matches where the scissor bat gets involved, and Jeff, you and Jeff Gant's match too, when the scissor bat came out. It's a safe weapon, but it can be hazardous just because of the actual scissors, and it's kind of nice seeing like weapons like that, because otherwise there's a promo that I watched a lot called Mystery Wrestling over in Gatineau, Quebec. They had a death match, but their death match was like it's ramen noodles on a door. And it's equivalent it's an equivalent to like It's equivalent to like nails on the door, but it's ramen.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, it doesn't hurt. That spot doesn't hurt, but it's interesting seeing that unique aspect in
Is it the shrimp kind? I
in.
wonder.
That's a good question. Well,
That's
it's probably just top ramen, probably.
top ramen. Yeah, I imagine.
And also, we're going to talk about your time in Inspire. One match kind of made me a little bit surprised when you faced Danny Orion. What was the thought coming before the match, during, and after? And Danny won the entire thing. And what was going on through your head when that match happened?
Damn, this little shit's really tough. Look at him. I just keep chopping the ever living hell out of him, and he just keeps getting. That's what I was thinking. And my God, he flew like 10 feet away when I threw him through the chairs. If you watch that clip where I whip him into the chairs, he flew. So Danny is one of these guys who, you know, out of the school AAPW here in Austin, who is just, he gets it. He gets it. He gets it a lot. I don't want to pump this kid up too much, but I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he is just very good at kind of the idea of matches and kind of how they need to come up, you know, be structured and built up. And you know what? He wanted to do crazy like all Japan wrestling with me, and I think we went out there and did pretty well. You know, some crazy bumps in that match.
And especially with the new year coming up, what were some of your goals that you have in mind as the new year is already here in terms of your wrestling career?
Well, this is the year that I am telling myself I'm going to Japan. This is the year it happens.
Oh.
It is my dream in wrestling. I first discovered wrestling, oddly enough, kind of a weird way, and Japanese wrestling was kind of at the forefront of that. And it's weird to say that when you're 4 years old and you discover Japanese wrestling. I'll get to it in a minute, but Japan has always been my goal. It's like a lot of people might say one of the companies that's on TV right now in the United States, but I just Japanese wrestling is something I just super respect and I love. Whether it's Japanese deathmatch wrestling or more of like your strong style, Kings Road style match wrestling,
Ooh, okay.
it doesn't matter. Those are all things that I love in wrestling. Like I have the weirdest combination. I loved FMW and like All Japan as a teenager, so it kind of fused together like that. So I don't know. It's weird to say like in the same sentence that my favorite wrestlers are all like either really technical and hard hitting guys or like these deathmatch guys. So it's a weird counterbalance to each other. So, but Japan is the number one goal. I want to do it this year. I think I can't say anything, but I have some feelers on it right now, and I want that to make those things happen this year. You know, so I want to say by the end of this year, I will be in Japan at one point wrestling.
And I've had Brick on before, and he has aspirations in Japan. Now, if you have a dream opponent, no restrictions, win or loss, if you can name that dream opponent that you have this year, who would that be, and what type of match would you like to have that person?
Oh my God. Okay.
Same reaction as Brick.
No limitations.
Outcome regardless, win or lose.
Okay. Can I give you two? Just because I would want one to be more of a traditional match, and the other one be a death match.
Of course. Okay. There's no rules. You know, it's the Outback rule. No rules, just right.
No rules, just right. You just threw that Outback in there. Oh my God.
I aim to please.
I love that. It's awesome. The matches I would like to have this year. God. Okay. Dream opponents. Number one, dream opponent. I always tell people this. If there's any way I can make it happen, it's really hard. is Shingo Takagi. I think Shingo
Oh.
Takagi is the coolest wrestler in the world to watch wrestle. I
Mm.
I watch his matches. I would just want to do like a heavy Kings Road style New Japan All Japan match,
Mm.
and I would like to go at least 20 minutes with him. That's all, because I think he is so badass. I watch his matches and it makes me love wrestling. One of those guys. So I'd
Yeah.
say he's one, like my all time number one singles match opponent. And then for death matches, this is the hard one. There's a few. Okay, we're on no restrictions. We're just gonna go the big one. The big one.
Yeah.
It would be Jun Kasai. Uh,
Wow. Okay,
he
that's a deep cut. That is a
that
deep cut.
that's he's I think he's the greatest deathmatch wrestler in the last 20 to 25 years. I think he's insanely good. That guy is amazing. Also, I think he's underrated. Also, like I said, he's one of those guys that happens to be a deathmatch wrestler, but is actually a really good wrestler. And a lot of people, you don't see that always until you watch him. Like last year, he had that match with El Desperado, and that match is insane. If you ever get a chance to go watch that match, it is, yes, it's a death match, but you see how they build it and everything, and it just
Mm.
like it's this art form that I love, and I would love to do that with him. Those are the two ones. I know those are huge ones. If we're going realistic, I would like to. I'd like to wrestle against Kevin Koo. I don't know if you're familiar with Kevin. He's
Yes,
a
I've seen those in. I see them in Ring of Honor matches too. So
yes, Kevin Koo's a guy I'd love to wrestle, and just an awesome like beat the shade char match. I think me and him would literally just come out of the match black and blue from just either hitting each other just super hard or what. That's the guy. That's the attainable one, I'd say, is Kevin Koo. That's the one. I want to wrestle him so bad.
yeah, I find it fascinating with your ring persona and your ring gear and everything. There are some pieces of like Eastern European influences in your ring attire, ring character, and all of that. What were some of those influences that kind of make you, well, you?
So when I first got into wrestling, obviously being a child of immigrants, everyone wants to always like, oh, you're Eastern European. Oh, let's give you this character, you know. And I literally to this day love to say, am I allowed to swear on this? Have I sworn already? I
Yeah,
don't
go
even
for it.
know.
Go for
Okay,
it.
fuck you. I do not need to do some basics. Not to you, but just to those people. Fuck you to people who want to shove a stereotype in my face.
Yeah.
My whole like character and how I look at everything I do in wrestling is I am combating the
Mm.
negative stereotypes that I think have come about uh, Eastern European, Russian, you know, anyone of that descent. And it's I think a lot of people want to just be like, I come out, I do hammer and sickle, I sing Russian national
Right.
anthem, and
Right.
it's just like, man, if, I hate that. I hate it so much. So
Right.
I'm literally trying to be an alternative, and I unapologetically will always do that. I just I do little influences. Yes, there's a little bit of you know, oh my god, military kind of look to my gear a little bit like that, and it's very, if you know Eastern European stuff, it just happens to be there because there's a lot of that equipment produced. I try to do a little bit of that, you know, with it, but I'm also just like, stay away from the color red.
Yeah.
I I don't do I don't come out with the flag and stuff like that, you know. I do have my Ukrainian patch, which I always support Ukraine, but I don't want to create any kind of a caricature of my heritage, you know. I'm very much trying to paint more of an image that it's more than just what you think you know from Rocky 4, you know. So
The Drago.
yeah. Literally, the first booker I worked for was like trying to give me like a manager to come out and do literally some Nikolai Volkov shit, and I'm like, you know, I don't necessarily do that. I appreciate it, but let's not and say we did, okay?
And what was the moment when you started wrestling? When did you start to get it? What was that
Oh, that
moment or a match?
moment. I would say like, God, it's terrible. my first year in wrestling is really strange to me, like, when I was active, because it's like, I to this day, it just felt like a weird, because it was, like, a lot of weird companies I worked for. I was, like, in the time, I was briefly living in Oklahoma, and
Mm,
I was working for some very interesting companies, let's just say that. They're very weird up there. Uh, and that first year feels like a blur, and then I moved to, Toronto to continue training up there a little bit
mm.
longer, and when I came back from there, I came back to Oklahoma, I was like, "No, let's not do this," and then I started going to Texas, and I said as soon as I started wrestling in Texas and then finally moving here, that is when I started getting it, because it's like, I was in there with people who I felt like were making me work harder, and people who actually, like, helped me become a better wrestler. So I'd say as soon as I moved to Texas, I think it started all making sense in the world to me. And it wasn't just like, let's go to this weird carny show in Oklahoma where the hot dogs are gray and stuff like that they're selling to
That's
fans,
oddly specific.
There's a moment I remember, and it's just like, what the hell is it? Did they think that's edible for some? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I think like Texas made me like want to be better, and also made me get better just because the opponents, the atmosphere. Texas wrestling, I think, is slept on a lot.
It's a mecca too. And when I first started moving here,
Yeah,
I think the very first wrestling promotion I had was Inspire. And
yeah,
Texas is kind of an interesting community where everyone knows everyone in the wrestling scene. And it's funny, let's say I would meet you in Inspire. The next thing you know, it's like, holy crap, you're in heart of Texas on Sunday. So it's a very small world in the wrestling community, but it's unique on its own because there's no other state that has it, that has
no,
a really unique wrestling scene that I've come across. Because I grew up, long story short, I grew up on the East Coast, and WWE was the biggest thing to have in that wrestling scene. But Texas on its own, on the independent side, it's very much unique.
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting because like a lot of other independent companies, obviously a lot of independent wrestlers can drive 8 hours, and they've passed through at least 2 or 3 states. There's people I know in here that drive 8 hours to go to a show still in Texas, starting in Texas, still going
Yeah,
to another show in Texas, whether it's someone comes down from the FW area, goes down to like Laredo or something like that.
right.
Or Gulf Coast, which has got it's like, I don't know if you're familiar with the people over there at Experience Pro Wrestling. They made a map recently where people could add companies, and they figured out like, oh my God, there's like 30 active companies if you really look at it. And
Wow.
like all over Texas. Obviously, we can be like, oh, okay, Central Texas is Inspire and stuff here, but then you start looking around like, wait a second, there's so many companies near the border of Mexico. There's companies out east that we barely ever talk about. And it's like people talk about Houston, but there's stuff above Houston. There's stuff way out west, like Mineral
Yeah.
Wells and stuff like that. It's like, my God, the Texas scene is actually like huge if you look at it. And a lot of people would have these scenes spread out through states, not in one state like
Yeah.
this. So it's really strange to look at it like that.
But it's still a big scene regardless. Like,
Yeah.
I would drive to reality on
Mm.
one day, and the next thing you know, this happened last year. It was reality on a Saturday, and the next thing I woke up, I drove to San Antonio for RCW, and I'm like, it's
Mm.
it's it's such a it's such a unique scene because you get to see people do their grind on the wrestling scene. They want to do their best because at the end of the day, this is what they love to do.
Yeah. Yeah. This is this is my passion. This is my job. I love it. And I would even, I mean, like, I wouldn't change anything about it. Obviously I have bigger aspirations, but the drive, the passion for it, and it's all this. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I love so many people are all out there grinding and trying to get better and better and trying to like build their stock and do more with it, because they love wrestling. So it's something I always like appreciate about the scene. I think everyone in
Mm.
Texas is always trying to really like go out there and do more.
And from your perspective, what keeps you going in doing the wrestling business? What was that one motivation to keep you going every single month in every wrestling event that you had?
Man, I would say the thing that keeps me going is just wanting to continue to create art. This is
Mm,
this is my art, and I love making like matches that are special to me that I can go back and watch and show people and like just like, hey, like I've had people come to me after shows and be like, hey, this was my first wrestling shows. I love that. Oh, this is, like
yeah.
you just said, this is my first death match. Holy God, I love death matches now because of you. Those are the coolest things. Like when
Yeah.
you get to do that for people. So I think being able to at least put myself in a position to make more art for people is always going to be a driving factor in wrestling. Yes, I have aspirations of wanting to go overseas and stuff like that and have those matches overseas. But like I think ultimately at the end of the day it comes down to me wanting to create art because
Mm.
that is what it comes down to with wrestling. Yes. I mean like again, whatever I'm throwing my way, whether it's supposed to be the bloodiest match ever or it's supposed to be technical or comedy, I just want to make art in any way I can.
What would be that type of art that would what would be that Pablo Picasso moment for you?
Oh my God. Uh, that is still, I'm pending. Let's say that's pending. I need to know what is, like, I've had a few matches that I'm just like, that's my best match ever or something like that. But I'm like, I'm still trying to have that one that I can be like, nothing's gonna top this. Because I've had matches that are like, I call my best match ever, but I'm also like, I think I can do better than that. I can do better.
Mm.
I can do better. And I will pick apart my matches. As soon as I have access to it, I will just like, okay, this could have been better right there. That could have been better, better, better. And people are like, why are you so mean to yourself? I'm like, because I have to. I have to.
Yeah.
I have to. I have to find the imperfections and fix them. I have to. But I still enjoy it. That's the thing. You have to find
Oh
joy.
yeah,
You
of
can't.
course. It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's not
I
like
know
it's.
people in wrestling who are miserable because they just like they can have good matches, but they will make it hard to the point where they're
Mm,
now miserable. And I never want to be one of those people. That being said, I will be critical of myself, but still enjoy myself. I guess that's a weird way to say it, but like try to be lighthearted with it, but also hypercritical. It's the weirdest yin and yang ever with it.
it's literally like a rock and a hard place at that point.
Yeah. I would agree. I would agree.
And we're going to be close to wrapping up. Thank you so
Sure.
much for having you on. And I always end my conversations with this. The World Health Organization listed adolescents between the ages of 10 and 19. Around that time, people who are in adolescence learn things within that age range. If you could see young Dimitri Alexandrov at age 16, who is kind of like trying to figure stuff out on their own while figuring out what their purpose in life is, what would you give that young Dimitri that advice?
Love of God, little Dimitri, you need confidence. My
Mm,
God, you're already pretty tall for what people would say. Just like get confidence in yourself. Stop putting yourself down. Stop
yeah.
being like so mean to yourself, calling yourself the tall, skinny kid. Go start working out now. It'll make you feel better later. And like just have faith in yourself because I feel like
Mm,
young me definitely. It took me a while to actually make the jump to do wrestling because of confidence issues and I wish I could build myself up sooner so I would like have the confidence to jump into it because this is my dream job. This is what I truly have wanted to do, but I think it took years of just like getting over that hump of having no confidence growing up that I wish I could just like, hey, stop that.
what were some obstacles when you were back then? Like what were some obstacles? What were some reservations from that 16-year-old Dimitri?
I was I'm like right around 6'3". I was very skinny despite playing I played hockey for a lot of my year, but I was very skinny. I was
Mm.
like lanky. I definitely needed all those pads. Let's say that. Uh, I was probably about 150 pounds and also
Wow.
6'3". So let's that paints an image. And let's say this real quick. My hero, my professional wrestling hero, if anyone ever asks, is actually Bryan Danielson. I
Mm.
met him at a show when I was 15, and he didn't have to, but he talked to me for like 15 minutes at a show. I was like,
Wow.
man, I'd love to be a professional wrestler, but I'm too small. And he's like looking up at me, and he's like, what is wrong with you? And he was like
Yeah.
really like juicing me up. He's like, go do this, do this. And I'm like, I wish I was such in a bad place I didn't jump into. Like right there, he was trying to motivate me. Like I was just saying to myself, he was literally trying to motivate me then. And I thought he was the coolest guy ever for that because he became my guy because of that.
Right.
Um, but like I just like had no confidence in myself. I had I just didn't see anything in myself for the longest time, and it's really sad to say that, uh, because like again, it hindered me chasing dreams of mine and wanting
Mm.
more out of life. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to college and get this degree that's kind of useless thing on the wall back there. But
Right. Right.
I mean, I got life experiences out of it, yes. But I at the same time, I just I wish I had had that go then, if that makes sense. I just wish I had someone kicking me in the butt a little harder to like get over like some of my like just not seeing anything of myself, seeing myself as really tiny and small and trying to make myself smaller. I wish those are things I could have just like pushed aside and just be like, no, I rock. I can do this. And not have an ego about it, obviously, but just try to like motivate myself in any way I can. I wish I could have done that.
And what was the one Bryan Danielson match at the time that made you look up to him afterwards?
Afterwards, my favorite match of all time is actually I got to go there for my graduation. I got to see his live
Mm.
in New York City. He wrestled against Takeshi Morishima. It was the end of their
Wow.
feud. It's a match called a Final Battle. All right, it's Final Battle 2008. It's the main event, no title involved. It's a fight without honor, so it's like a hardcore match. They don't use anything except a chain. That's the only weapon they use. That is my favorite match ever. It still is to this very day. I had to constantly go back like, is that still? Yes. I go watch things like that was so good. Wait, no, I have to go watch this and like, palate cleanse. No, that's still my favorite match ever. That match right there was just like I watched him. I got into Ring of Honor because of a DVD my brother gave me that was him and
Mm.
Liger wrestling each other, and that brought me like attention to my eyes with Ring of Honor. And then it's like I went to that show and met him. It's a show called Vendetta in
Mm.
2005, and then I just followed his career after that. I was like this 15-year-old kid who's just like this is my go. This is it. This is my guy now. And I don't know. I've only met him that one time, and if I could meet him now, I would tell him probably with tears in my eyes, like, hey man, I want to say you're like the
Fanboy.
guy. That is the only guy I would fanboy over. I was like, I was really thinking about it. It's like, no, I think these are all cool. Like, I love Mick Foley. I would be like, oh, that's so cool, but I wouldn't fanboy. I would probably be like in tears, and I would say like, dude, you didn't need to talk to me. And I understand that now, being a wrestler now, just going to shows. A lot of times you're in this go 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 mode, and you have to like kind of, I'm trying to sell merch, I'm trying to say hi to people, I'm trying to do all stuff, and it's like chaotic. And he just went out of his way to be like, hey kid, stop being so mean to yourself. So I don't know, that still sticks out to me. I think it's a good character test.
Okay, great. And I want to bring this
Sure.
one up too, especially when you're on the road constantly, and this year is going to
Constantly.
be that same scenario. How do you find your inner peace when you go on the road, when you go through these wrestling shows? What keeps that inner peace in mind when you do go into the road and going into those events?
Oh, if I'm writing by myself, I I do find time to do some lighthearted meditation. I do find those times when I can. Sometimes I'll pull over and I will have a moment I'll pull over, just kind of have that time when I need to myself. Sometimes before shows, just because, especially if I'm driving very far, I think you get so anxious because you're like example, I've done trips to St. Louis from here to St. Louis Anarchy, and those are 15-hour trips. And it's just like you drive all the way up there and you're like, okay, I'm a little too anxious. I've been in a car for all this time. I need to relax. I love to leave early so I have time to do these things. because I don't
Yeah.
like being a late guy. I never like being that person. So I'm just like, I'll leave super early
Yeah.
and I'll give myself time. And I always try to give myself time because I think that's a very important thing. If I'm with like other wrestlers or friends, I try to not talk nonstop wrestling. I try to have time we can play. Let's find out more about each other. Let's talk to each other about like things we like. That aren't just wrestling. And I try to have those moments now. And I think it's very easy for guys just to be in the car together. Let's see, let's talk about dirt. Let's talk about all
Yeah.
this stuff. And I'm like, man, I don't know. Let's enjoy this. Let's enjoy the trip. Let's enjoy like each other. I also think another thing is where guys may leave in a hurry and stuff. You don't get that time to appreciate life and the journey that is wrestling. Having those time where you could pull over to a silly, truck stop or something, or like example, I rode some guys to California and we stopped in Roswell because why not? Let's see a tourist trap, because we left with time to do that, because I think it's very easy to just be like, all right, I'm on the car. I have to get there. All right, this spot, this spot, this spot. And I'm just like, no, dude, let's take that time to appreciate the journey because that is something
Mm.
that I think is so important. Everyone's journey in wrestling is different too. There's no one way it's going to happen. And I think you should embrace the way you are currently going and also enjoy all of it around you.
It's always the journey. It's not just
Yeah.
as much as there is a destination, it's always the journey, because oftentimes that's how you figure out life that way. Because otherwise, if it's the end, there's nothing really to look back, and it's like, oh, that's it, cool. But
Yeah.
going on the road and just finding that balance and everything, because that's what always matters at the end of the day, is just the journey. Because once you're there, it's like, wow, I can't believe it's happening.
Yeah.
It's the Michael Scott, oh my God, okay, it's happening scenario, where a fire alarm goes up, everyone runs away.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Oh man, we are just about out of time. We're just about time. But thank you so much, Dimitri, for having this episode.
Sure. Shit.
Where
All
can
right.
we find you on socials? And what are some upcoming events do you have in store for 2024?
Ooh, I can announce things by now because there's things that couldn't announce until then. That's fun.
Dang it.
This is good. You'll get to know. But everyone had to wait. Okay, so you can find me on Instagram at Dimitri_Alexandrov. I have a Facebook. You can add me on there. That's fine. I add everyone on Twitter, or sorry, X.
Yeah, I
You
know.
can.
X. Yeah, I
I
forgot about
know.
that. Good.
You can put me on X. It's Dimitri Killbear. That's just a fun thing. Um, of course, I have a big cartel. I'm always selling merch and stuff. I have pro wrestling tees, but I barely use it. I'll be honest with you. I have more up-to-date merch though on my own big cartel. So, and I ship all those out personally, mail them myself. So that's something always good. It's come from that as opposed to the other big things. Upcoming matches. You don't know about this, but I've wrestled Schlack already in a death match on January 27th. I'm sorry it hasn't happened. I think in the next few days they're gonna announce. A few days after this comes out, me and Luchador Insane will be wrestling against Los Mazaros. So that's Sinclape and Miro Extremo. We'll be wrestling them in a deathmatch tag match in Baracho Pro Wrestling on the 4th. That's gonna get announced. That's gonna be in Austin, Texas. So if you want to see some crazy death match, even crazier, you could go to that one. Upcoming things, of course. Let's see. Now we're in February. I'll be wrestling Satu Jin at Wrestle Rave for my Wrestle Rave Deathmatch Championship. So I'm really excited for that one. Always wanted to wrestle him. And by now they've announced, of course, the Inspire vs. New Texas show. I'll be at that show. I can't tell you what I'm doing just yet, but I will be at that show representing Inspire. So, and that's
Battle
going to be,
Wars.
yes, that's at the end of the month. I believe that's I'm going to kill myself. How is it? What day is that? The
Yeah, I'm checking
28th.
that right now. It is February 25th.
That's
That
what
will
I
be
thought.
February 25th. So it'll be the end of February where Battle Wars with Inspire and New Texas. So that's going to be a fun one. And I mentioned this on another on another episode with Don that the logo is hype enough already. I mean,
yes.
it's literally, it is literally a one is a bear, one is a shark. I mean, dear Lord. I mean,
they're also kind of like robotic, almost mecha kaijus too. So I'm just like, good God.
It's like I already got my tickets, so we're all set on that front.
Good.